Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last webinar in this NCR Center series. In case you haven't attended the previous ones, my name is Zachary Berglund. I am a master's student at Purdue University studying microbiology and food safety, and I've had this wonderful opportunity to be the moderator for the series. I'd like to personally thank all of you to take the time to attend this webinar. I know that many educators right now are working to get their classroom ready for the coming school year. However, before I introduce the speaker, I'd like to ask each of you to please fill out the survey that I'm going to post in chat right now. Thank you. Okay. Keyboard is acting up. All right, I'll send that out here in a second. So regardless, after that, the survey will contain the link to what you need to basically request for CE credits, as well as collect data for us so we can support doing more of these webinars. There are also some other things I'd like for you to know. This session is being recorded and will be made available to all participants and/or people who registered for this webinar. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them in the chat or ask me. There will be a 15-minute Q&A after this 30-minute presentation. Towards the end of this, there will also be a second survey to fill out to provide us feedback, and we greatly appreciate if you took the time to fill it out. Without much further delay, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Julie Garden-Robinson. Dr. Garden-Robinson is a professor and foods and nutrition specialist from North Dakota State University. Her work explores a wide range of topics from food safety to food preservation, agriculture, nutrition, and food entrepreneurship. She published numerous publications and papers about the education of food safety and nutrition and more. Her extension programs have received many honors from both the North Dakota State University and the North Central Region Center for FSMA Training, Extension, and Outreach. Her career, she started off as a lecturer and worked her way up to her current role, serving as an extension specialist and column writer for numerous different blogs and forums. Outside her current position, she serves as a music coordinator for a church and writes a weekly blog at prairiefair.areavoices.com. And she is a music and antique lover and a mother of 3. However, today, Dr. Garden-Robinson will be speaking about the topic of food waste reduction.
Thank you very much, Zach, and thanks to all of you for joining me today. As you can see, I'm not in my office at a desk. I decided to explore a different place down the hall. This is the Food Education Lab at North Dakota State University. And I brought with me some food waste from my students' experiences yesterday. They were busy working on a video. So anyway, I just saved their food waste because I thought it made a good point, because that is what we're going to be talking about today. So I hope you can hear me fine, and I hope you can see the screen. We also provided you with a PDF of these slides and also a handout on composting that we created a couple of years ago. And we have a lot more information on our website. You're certainly free to explore whatever we have. You can print it out, hand it out, use it as you'd like, excerpt it. So anyway, lots more for you to look at after today's talk. All right, now let's see if I can get my computer. There we go. So today we're going to talk about food waste, some strategies to reduce wasted food. I was also asked to address food recalls. We'll talk about food product dates, a little bit on food preservation. I've got a lot of other things to talk about, as you can see, composting, and I also have some additional resources to raise awareness. So again, if you go to the PDF you received, you will be able to access all of this information and see those resources as well. So today, as you listen and interact, I'd like you to write down at least one, or maybe 2 or even more action steps that you would like to take. Because this is going to take all of us. Because I hope by the end you're going to see that food waste is a huge issue. And you can put your list on your refrigerator. And then check back on your progress in a few weeks. If you've met your goals, just like in nutrition, then come up with a bigger goal. But as I said, food waste is certainly a big issue in this country. So there's a difference between the two terms that I have on the screen right now. There's food loss, and that's food that you really can't eat because it's moldy, rotten, it's not safe. And then there's food waste, and that can happen in a lot of different ways. It can be the food that you dump in the trash after cooking or after your family eats, but it also can be other things. So if we take a look at the breakdown of solid waste, so what gets into the municipal solid waste program, it's a lot of different things. So leather, textiles, rubber makes up 12%. Paper, paperboard 15, yard trimmings 8, metals 9, glass 5, plastics 18. You might think it's all plastic. Wood 8. Food makes up the biggest piece of the puzzle. 21% of the solid waste in municipal solid waste disposal is food. And some of that food is actually would have been edible, but got thrown away because people misinterpreted the date or just, forgot they had it in the refrigerator or other places. Big unfortunate statistic here, 40% of food produced in the United States is wasted. So in the chat, which I can't really see right now, so I'll let you look at what you think, how much food does the average consumer throw away each day? So you can go to the chat box and just put in the number of ounces or pounds or whatever you think. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. More people coming in, so I'm going to let them in. So I'm operating on a system that we're using to deliver remote classes. So that's what I'm trying out. So let's see, what is the answer to that question? See, shouldn't touch anything. It's about a pound a day. And this is what makes up that food loss. So if you said a pound, you're correct. So it can be added fats, oils, grain products, 14%, fruit, 18%, vegetables. And if you're in nutrition, we're always trying to get people to eat more fruits and vegetables, and look at all that's being thrown away. Between the two, or three actually, we've got 66%, with dairy products most commonly thrown away. So Zach, I'll have you continue to let people in. And if we look further at the different sectors, we might think it's institutional foods where most of this food is being tossed or lost. And actually it's residential, 45%. About 17.4 million pounds. So it's not the grocery stores, it's not the restaurants necessarily, although they're contributing to it. It's institutional quick service restaurants, but again, mainly homes, residences. And there are a lot of consequences to wasted food. Certainly, we're throwing away money when we throw away food. We're also affecting our environment. And I think a lot of you on this call probably do some work with food security. If we're throwing away 40% of our food, couldn't some of that food be recovered and used in different ways? So it has several consequences. And as I mentioned, certainly food insecurity is widespread. And if we haven't learned anything else, we've probably learned during this pandemic, the big issue with food insecurity. If you watched all those cars driving up to get foods when the parents lost their jobs or people were laid off, about 1 in 7 Americans is food insecure. And that's a big total. So is there anything we as a group, and I would expect a lot of you are within the extension system and have, and other agencies as well, of course. I think we all can play a big role in helping with food insecurity and also teaching people how to avoid wasting all of this food. So here are some tips to get us started thinking. And the first is to be aware of how much food that you yourself throw away. How much trash are you taking out? And although, a lot of us train people to look at the unit price, and we might buy in bulk because it tends to be less expensive. But I think an important message that we need to share with those that we are teaching is not to buy more food than we can use before it spoils, or use before you get tired of eating it. So if I go to some of these big box warehouse type stores and I taste something, I might buy a container of it, but I get tired of it after a while. So it probably would have been a better idea for me to buy the smaller amount, even though it might be more expensive. Some other things, of course, planning meals, using shopping lists, thinking about what you're buying, checking your fridge or pantry. And just as a sharing of resources, we have about a 21 publication series called Pinch Pennies in the Kitchen. So check that out. It teaches people how to use what they have on hand so they can make their own soup or casserole or quesadilla. And that's all on our NDSU Extension food website. Avoid these impulse and bulk purchases, which I already mentioned a little bit. Be especially cautious about buying fresh produce and dairy that may have a limited shelf life. We can certainly preserve fresh produce in a lot of different ways. And I know a lot of you teach on how to do that. You can also freeze milk. That's okay. You can freeze butter. Sometimes people don't think they can freeze things that they actually can. So as a lot of extension agencies do have food freezing guides, we have a very comprehensive food freezing guide. Check that out. I just used it myself today when I was answering a question. So again, be aware of all those promotions in grocery stores because they know it works. If they let you taste something, that is a great marketing strategy. Well, for us too, to get people to try different foods. But remember, these promotions promote purchases of unusual products or bulk amounts of products. So really think through that because that can also contribute to you throwing away food and money. So again, I was asked to talk a little bit about food recalls. And does anyone know what the latest recall is? You can put that in the chat and maybe Zach can tell me what you're putting because I don't want to touch my screen right now.
I can do that.
That'd be great. So what is the latest recall? It just popped up as an alert on my computer yesterday.
Carrots, E. coli, so instance ground beef.
It was a more unusual one. I think it's recent. It was actually McCormick Spices. There was concern with salmonella in the Italian spice. And that came through yesterday. So if you're ever wondering what food is currently recalled, just go to fda.gov and they will have a section that shows what are the current recalls, what are the proposed causes or actual causes. That's a good thing to just check. Or as I did, I got on an alert system so I kind of know because chances are someone will ask me. So there are 3 main classes of recalls. So I'll just go through each of these in case you are not familiar with this. So if it's a class 1 recall, that's for a product that could cause serious injury or death. Those I heard E. coli mentioned. E. coli 0157H7 in anything almost could cause serious injury or death. Class 2 recall is for products that might cause serious injury or maybe a temporary illness. So that could be, maybe it's mislabeled in some way, or there's a piece of packaging is in the product, something like that. Class 3 is for products that are unlikely to cause injury or illness, but they may violate FDA regulations. So again, this might be a less serious thing. It could be some kind of mislabeling that the FDA wants everyone to know what's in the product. So keep these tips in mind, that products that are recalled due to an undeclared allergen may be a risk for anyone in your household with an allergy. And if a recalled product has never been served, throw it away or return it for a refund. If possible, I would go get my money back. But if you live far from a store and you don't mind tossing it, or composting it, if that's a possibility, that would be an option as well. The extreme heat in composting will probably take care of the issue, but discarding it where humans aren't going to eat it, animals aren't going to eat it, is a good thing. If the product has been served, wash any surfaces with soap and water, including plates, pots, pans, utensils, counters, where that product may have had contact. So you don't want to eat the product that has been recalled, just as a good general safety principle. So what, by definition, is a recall? It means that a food producer or a government agency takes the product off the market because there's reason to believe that it may cause consumers to become ill. This could be a serious liability for the company. They don't want you to get sick after eating your product. There are also legal issues, of course, with making consumers sick. So again, these are some reasons, like a class 1 discovery of an organism such as salmonella, parasite such as cyclospora, discovery of foreign objects, broken glass or metal that could cause serious injury, or another discovery of an allergen that doesn't appear on the product label. So many of us do not have allergies, but there may be people who come to your house who do. So those products need to be correctly labeled, truthfully labeled. What about recalled food? These can actually contaminate your kitchen, especially if there's bacteria present, parasites present. Again, clean off all your counters, your refrigerator drawers. If you bought spinach, for example, that was contaminated with E. coli, wash them with hot soapy water. This came from FDA. I would also add the sanitizing step in the next one. So it's sanitizing solutions such as 1 tablespoon of unscented liquid chlorine bleach per gallon of lukewarm water, typically. So a dilute bleach solution. And we want to let these air dry so that the organisms are killed. So again, it's not only the food, it's what that food may have touched. So be very cautious about it. Treat it like it could hurt you or your family. Well, of anything that I get asked about, I guess through the years, and I have about a 25-year extension experience, dates on packages is probably my biggest question. And sometimes I feel like people are just asking me for permission to throw things away. Sometimes when they ask me questions about eggs, it can be just a misinterpretation, and those eggs are fine. As an example, a couple years ago, I was called by a mom who was making cookies with her child, which is a great activity. And the egg, or the date on the egg carton, was the day that we were talking. And she was wondering if she could still use those. Well, as you'll see in the next slides, egg carton dates are typically sell-by dates, and 3 to 5 weeks beyond the sell-by date is actually okay. Eggs are going to be okay actually a long time. Or they might ask me, well, if I take these eggs and I hard cook them, then can I keep them even longer? No, that actually shortens the shelf life. So We have a guide on our website called the Food Storage Guide. That's a good one. There are a lot of really nice apps that you can download that can help you guide you as well. So there is a lot of misinterpretation, as a lot of you probably realize. It takes a bit of common sense when we're deciding if something's safe to eat. Sometimes the date doesn't mean anything if someone has left it out on their counter for a long period of time. But this is interesting. I pulled this quote online. Food industry experts in the US say that not a single food safety outbreak has been traced to eating past date food. So don't throw all the food away right away. Use your common sense. In some cases, probably many cases, that food is still okay. And if you work with food pantries, you'll have to see what their policies are. But a lot of times the cereals that have a past date are actually okay. So I think the website is stilltasty.com. You might check that one out. But there are some good apps that can help guide you. Some things to remember. A lot of people think that the date labels are mandatory, and actually they're voluntary. They're not required. And most are not expiration dates, even though we might hear that. I hear that on TV all the time when you have people talking about dates on packages and calling them expiration dates. There actually are only a couple of items that have genuine expiration dates. Those would be baby foods, baby formulas. Those I would not use past the date because there can be nutritional changes. There could even be safety changes. Sometimes yeast will have an expiration date because it won't be very active after that date. So dates are all about freshness, quality, and companies want to convey when you're going to get the best eating experience. You're going to have the peak flavor, color, texture. That's what quality is when you eat that food. So they're freshness dates, and there is a move now. It's getting comments to have all dates be these quality dates, best if used by dates, instead of all the different ways that they're conveying date information. So as you're working with consumers, you know, there's a bit of common sense that we have to use. And we don't need to throw things away necessarily. So again, here are the current definitions. Best before, best by means it's at its best flavor and quality. It's still safe if you eat it several days beyond that. Some products might have a use by date. And even with those products, which you might interpret as being expiration dates, you actually might have a 1 week grace period to consume the food, especially if you've kept that food cold. So if it's yogurt or milk, you actually might have some days beyond that. Here's where you can use your senses. Sniff it. And I know that's an old-fashioned way of checking it, but even FDA says use your sniffer and see if it has a bad smell. Certainly as we grow older, maybe our olfactory abilities aren't as good as they used to be. So for older adults, you know, you might have a younger child come in and check it out, you know, one of your own kids, or they might do a discard date on that package. Sell by, that is a store date. It's typically on dairy, eggs, meat. That's the store date. And as I think I mentioned, in most cases, eggs that have been kept cold can be used 5 weeks after that carton date. And in other countries, eggs are not refrigerated, but in our country, we do recommend keeping eggs. The usual recommendation is below 45 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so next I'm going to move right along into some strategies to reduce or reuse wasted food. And we're going to talk about composting. This was one of the handouts that I provided. We also created a bingo game based on composting. So if you want to reach directly out to me, I'd be happy to share that with you because I think people are a little bit afraid of it. I just did a talk in Minnesota last week, and we were talking about Well, I was talking about herbs when we got into the topic of composting. And the lady who was asking the question said that nothing was happening in her compost bin. She kept on throwing more and more food, like my lettuce and peppercorns and all these sorts of things I have. Well, there's something that she was missing. We certainly have the heat. She had the food. You think about what do you think she was missing doing? Think about that. And I'll get to that in a minute. So you can raise your hand with your little icon or click on the hand icon if you have a compost bin. And the second thing, okay, we got a couple that raised their hands. In the chat box, what's another name for compost? It has a slang name as well, used in a lot of places. So you can go to the chat, and if you know another name for compost, you can put it in there. And as you're thinking about a goal, I'm going to encourage you to consider trying out composting. There are even some little home-based compost bins you can keep in your kitchen, available in lots of places. So I'm not gonna sell any today, but you can order them online or in some retail stores.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Zach, any answers to the name for compost?
Not for the name of compost, just a few suggestions people have.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, there's one just came in, black gold.
That's right. People sometimes call it black gold because by the time that you're done composting, you are going to get a very rich substance, rich in organic materials that's great for gardens. You can put it in planters and lots of different things. It enriches the soil. It's also great for helping maintain moisture. It can reduce the need for chemical fertilizers. It encourages the production of beneficial bacteria and fungi. It reduces waste. It's a good way for me to use this lettuce. I think I'm going to bring this home and put it in my compost bin in the backyard. In fact, my husband is so enamored with our compost that when we moved several years ago, he brought the compost along, and the real estate agent was shocked when he was moving compost. And I said, "You worked hard for that." The other benefit of black gold or compost is that it can actually reduce methane emissions, so it's good for the environment. So what can you compost? Most things. So food scraps, I listed a bunch there, apple cores or leafy greens. You can put in eggshells, banana peels, potatoes, coffee grounds, annual weeds, but I will add one thing about these annual weeds. You don't want them to have gone to seed. Or if you put your compost with weed seeds in it, you're not going to be happy because it will sprout and grow and you will be very disappointed. So you want to get those weeds before they go to seed. Browns, trees, not the whole tree obviously, but cut up pieces of the tree, branches, leaves, even shredded paper, shredded newspaper, sawdust, wood chips, cardboard. So you kind of want a mixture of greens, browns, and there's the missing element that my visitor to my booth had for me. She wasn't watering her compost bin, and just like this year is so hot and dry in many parts of the country, you're not going to grow all your beneficial bacteria and enhance the breakdown of your food. So you need that water for the success of your living ecosystem. So you want to keep it damp. Like, don't have an amount of water to tell you, but you do need to dampen it periodically and also turn it. You want to turn it every few weeks. There are some things you do not want to compost. So you don't want to throw in meat, fish, bones, scraps, fat, grease, lard, oils, dairy products, certainly not pet waste, yard trimmings that have been treated with chemicals, because those chemicals could persist and you could end up not being able to grow things as well as you thought. I mentioned the weeds with mature seed heads. You really don't want to compost charcoal. A little bit is okay, but not a ton. And you don't want to put in insect-ridden or diseased plants. And the reason for, especially the meat and the fats and all that, you don't want to attract pests because they'll think you're setting up a grazing station for them, and you might actually get some rodents moving in. So you want to keep it with the plant-based materials primarily. So this is a picture off the composting guide. So you select a dry, shady spot near a water source, then you add your browns and greens. When the material at the bottom is dark, it's ready to use. And once it's established, you can keep on feeding it, and of course add water as needed. So these are all important steps. And again, all of this information is on that additional PDF that Zach included. So how long does it take? It can be ready in about 3 months. In our cold climate in the Dakotas, Minnesota, this area, it stops in the winter. You're still going to have some heat in the central area, but if it continues to compost at all, it's going to be very slow. So that all depends on the size of your materials you put in and the size of your pile. How do you use it? The general rule is up to 3 inches on top of the soil, and then work it into a depth of about 8 inches to a foot, and then apply a layer every year. And it does make a difference, and you can see the darkness of this. Many municipal solid waste areas also compost, and they have big piles that you can pick up for very low cost, or in our case, I can get barrels of compost if I need a lot for free. Okay, so next I'm going to keep my eye on my time. I'm not going to go into great depth with this, of course, because this is its own topic, but certainly food preservation and knowing how to preserve food is really important. And I ask that all of you in education, or even if you're not, I ask for your help. As you see people doing things wrong, please correct them. There is such an abundance of false, even dangerous information out on the internet being shared in Facebook and tweets and Pinterest and all that. We as educators who've had background in this really need to reach out. We even have some groups that are rebels, so they purposely don't follow the rules. So I'm going to have you again raise your hand if you've ever preserved food. Okay, every hand should be up. Because I would bet that all of you have a refrigerator in your house. That is one of our basic ways of preserving food. Short question, but certainly refrigeration is one of our easiest ways. Some other things to think about is you want to think about those sources, certainly extension sources, the National Center for Home Food Preservation, great sources of information. So I don't know where you're all from, but you all have a land grant college if you're in the US, and I am sure that you could get a hold of research tested recipes, and if not, go to any of the other extension agencies. A lot of people get all nostalgic when it comes time to can food or preserve food, and they want to take out great grandma's recipe. And I have nothing against grandmas and heritage recipes. I think that's really cool. I think it's nice to spread recipes to generations, but maybe not the food preservation recipes, because they change through time with research. And actually, the research in food preservation is fairly new. It began in the 1940s, and by 1994, there was a major overhaul on canning guidelines. So if you have some really old publications, you're going to want to check the more recent ones and see if the guidelines are still the same. So again, in 2006, we also had reviewing and revising, and subsequently, if they find out things in research, we try to get it out to you. But please, if you're out there, help us get the correct information to the public, because some of the things I hear about kind of makes my hair on the back of my neck stand up, because it's pretty scary. Food preservation home food preservation is most closely linked to cases of botulism, which is our most deadly form of foodborne illness. So again, research tested canning recipes. Check out USDA Extension, the National Center. Okay, now we're just going to move into some consumer opportunities. So this is a very, very old poster, but I like it because it's kind of a good thing to think about. Food, buy it with thought, cook it with care, serve just enough, save what will keep, eat what would spoil, and remember, homegrown is best. So this came out many, many years ago, and I have a whole collection of old cookbooks. So I have a series that were developed during World War II that I like to look at, because our grandparents, great-grandparents, in some of your cases, great-great-grandparents, really knew how to take care of food. And I found some really good ideas. Some of the recipes are pretty interesting too, but I think we have to think in terms of preserving our food, using it wisely. So some other things, we talked about composting. There's also great ways to donate extra produce. Farmers to families came into being a lot with the pandemic. So donate if you are a gardener. And we have a lot of other resources where we can gather some things. Some of you might also write newspaper columns or newsletters. However you can get this information out. Maybe you have Facebook pages, Twitter accounts, and so on. But in 2013, that's when they really started thinking about this a lot. They had a campaign called Let's Talk Trash. During the pandemic, 2020, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Food and Drug Administration, and Department of Agriculture renewed their commitment to food waste reduction. So they really want all of us to help, and I think there are some social media posts that you can pick up as well. The goal is to reduce wasted food 50% by 2030. So we're already in 2021, so we've got some work to do. There are other resources, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, National Dairy Council, Feeding America. They've all joined in, and they also have great resources to help us reach out. Because as you know, you have to hear some things many times before you take action or you learn it. There's also the ugly food movement. 1 in 5 fruits and vegetables grown don't fit the beautiful standards of many grocery stores. So the carrots might be crooked, or the cucumbers aren't perfectly straight, the apples aren't the right size, and so they don't sell them. So there's also an imperfect, ugly food movement. So you might even see bins in a local grocery store so you can pick it up. It's safe. It may be like that strawberry that looks a little strange, but it's still same nutritional value. I wouldn't have moldy ones though. I wouldn't eat the moldy stuff, but if it doesn't have the right shape, it's still okay. So I think I'm on time here. So in summary, I just want you to remember that unfortunately, we're wasting about 40% of the food that we produce. And that's about $160 billion. And we talked a little bit about food insecurity. Food wasted contributes to environmental deterioration. It takes extra water, resources, and releases greenhouse gases. And if we just follow some of these little tips, maybe we could really make a difference. So as you're setting your goal, and I hope you've done that, consider what your role can be in this issue. Maybe you're going to teach somebody something. Maybe you're going to start composting. And with that, I thank you for being here today, and I'm going to try to figure out how to stop my sharing.